God exposed their lie to the one they never expected, and they don't even know it yet. Chosen one, that truth is now moving unseen, weaving through the spirit realm, while their carefully constructed story collapses quietly around them. What they thought was hidden is no longer secret. But here is the half-revelation, the only part heaven allows you to receive now. Their lie has been revealed to someone who can see through deception, but the full consequence, who it was, why heaven chose them, and how it will shift your destiny, will only be revealed as you stay with this message until the end. You didn't stumble upon this by accident. Heaven led you here because your spirit has already been sensing the shift. Perhaps you've noticed subtle energy changes, glances, avoidance, tension in conversations, things you couldn't fully name. You've endured whispers, rumors, and misrepresentation, and it weighed on your soul. But all of it was never against you. It was preparation. Every lie they told, every secret they carried, became a marker for divine revelation. Chosen one, this is where their own deceit becomes their undoing. Heaven orchestrated the timing so that the one they thought would believe the falsehood was actually the person with discernment, spiritual awareness, and clarity to see the truth. The half you can know now, they cannot hide from the exposure, and it unsettles them beyond what they imagined. But the complete picture, the lessons, the consequences, and the blessings God is orchestrating for you will be revealed later in this message. Your peace and growth have become living proof of truth. You didn't need to confront, prove, or argue. Your elevation, your alignment, your integrity, all silently testified for you. And while they scramble to cover the lie, you rise effortlessly, because heaven's favor cannot be stopped. Every whispered attempt to diminish you only reflected their own fear. The half-revelation I give now is enough to awaken your spirit. They are unsettled, they are aware, and they cannot undo what heaven has revealed. But the deeper revelation, how this moment will open doors, remove obstacles, and prepare you for your next season, remains hidden until the timing is right. That part is reserved for those who stay in alignment with divine timing, those who watch and wait, those who trust that heaven's plan is always precise. So breathe, chosen one. The truth has already been spoken, and your calling is being cleared. Comment 777 below as an act of faith, a declaration that you recognize God's timing and truth. Like this video, share it with another chosen soul, and subscribe not as a habit, but as a covenant with heaven that you are ready to receive the full revelation when it unfolds. Stay with me until the end, because the part of this story that heaven has reserved for the conclusion will show you exactly how their lie became the catalyst for your destiny, your freedom, and your elevation, and why nothing about this was accidental. God's chosen ones, heaven revealed their lie to the one they least expected. Number 1. There comes a moment in every chosen one's journey when heaven quietly turns the tables, not with thunder, not with confrontation, but with revelation. And that is what happened here. They thought they could shape a narrative about you in the dark, whisper a lie into the right ears, and escape unseen. They assumed they had chosen the perfect witness, someone easy to sway, someone spiritually unaware, someone hungry for gossip or validation. But what they did not realize was that the person they ran to carried more spiritual authority than they ever imagined, and more than they themselves possessed. Could it be that sometimes those we underestimate carry the power to expose the unseen truths around us? When they lied about you, they thought they were choosing an audience, but heaven had already chosen the observer. They didn't know they were confiding in someone who listens with more than ears, someone who discerns with more than logic, someone whose intuition is sharper than most people's evidence. This wasn't an ordinary listener. This was someone whose spirit has weathered storms, someone who has learned to recognize truth by vibration and deception by tone. And the moment your name crossed the liar's lips, the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't that the liar stumbled. It wasn't that they hesitated. The words flowed smoothly, rehearsed even. But spiritually mature people don't measure truth by performance, they measure it by resonance. And the story they tried to spin about you carried a frequency that didn't match the energy of your life. It clashed with your character, contradicted your patterns, and opposed everything the listener had observed about you from a distance. Proverbs 12:19 says, "Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue lasts only a moment." At that moment, the lie began to decay. Are you able to recognize the vibrations of truth in your own life, even when words seem convincing? What the liar didn't understand is that discernment works like a spiritual tuning fork. A lie may enter the room quietly, but the vibration it creates betrays its origin. The listener could sense it instantly, the bitterness trembling beneath the surface, the jealousy hiding inside the phrasing, the insecurity leaking through the details. They weren't just listening to a recount of events. They were reading intentions, motives, and emotional patterns that stretched far beyond the story itself. Joaquin Caravaggio once said that light reveals what darkness hopes to hide, and that is exactly what unfolded. A subtle shift in the listener's eyes became the beginning of the unraveling. Their silence was not agreement, it was analysis. Their stillness was not acceptance, it was discernment. They were weighing every tone, every breath, every inconsistency. They were noticing the venom wrapped in concern, the exaggeration hidden in the descriptions, the strange delight the liar took in trying to shrink your spirit. The liar didn't realize they had stepped onto sacred ground, the kind of space where truth is felt, not explained. They assumed they were planting seeds. Instead, they exposed their roots. Psalm 101:7 declares, "No one who practices deceit shall dwell in my house. No one who speaks falsely shall stand in my presence." And the person they lied to carried that same spiritual intolerance for distortion. Suddenly, the liar was no longer the storyteller, they were the suspects. The listener's spirit began replaying memories, moments where your integrity spoke louder than your words, times when your character proved itself without announcement, situations where your presence revealed steadiness even under pressure. Everything about the lie felt misaligned. Everything about the liar felt reactive. This is the part people often overlook. Spiritual authority is not loud, it is not dramatic, it is not emotional, it is perceptive. And that perception sliced through their deception like thin paper. Your name, once spoken, brought clarity, not confusion. Their lie, once released, illuminated their character, not yours. The listener suddenly saw them differently, and the liar felt the shift. How often do we allow our discernment to quietly defend the truth without needing to intervene overtly? That was when fear began to settle in. Because spiritual people talk to spiritual people, and truth doesn't travel through gossip, it travels through alignment. They know word moves in ways they cannot predict, through channels they cannot control, through hearts that carry wisdom instead of noise. They know the listener might reach out to someone else, or worse, might speak directly to you. They fear exposure, not because of what you might say, but because of what heaven already revealed. There is a concept in psychology known as the halo of consistency, the idea that people with strong, steady character create a pattern so clear that lies cannot cling to them. That is you. Everything about your life becomes a light source that exposes shadows, and the person they lied to recognized instantly that the story did not match the consistency of your soul. Isaiah 28:17 says, "Truth will be the measure of the line, and righteousness the plumb line," meaning truth makes everything that is crooked collapse under its own weight. Their story collapsed the moment it was told, not because you defended yourself, but because heaven defended you. Your truth didn't need to fight. The authority of the listener fought for you. And now, they're avoiding you not because of what you did, but because heaven revealed their lie to someone who could not be lied to. Number 2. The moment their lie began to unravel was never because you defended yourself. It wasn't the rebuttal, the explanation, or the confrontation that disarmed their narrative. Their story collapsed because it could not survive standing beside the kind of person you have consistently shown yourself to be. What they didn't understand is that the life you built quietly, the integrity you carried through unspoken trials, and the spiritual authority embedded in your presence had already formed a fortress around your truth. Lies can survive weakness, but they crumble when met with unwavering character. And character like yours isn't fabricated, it is refined through experience, tempered by patience, and forged in the fires of endurance. Could it be that the strongest defenses are the ones we don't even announce? When someone speaks falsehoods about you, the first test is always comparison. People instinctively measure lies against the evidence of your lived life. And your track record, the consistency of your actions, the honesty in your dealings, the unwavering steadiness in moments of chaos, acted as a mirror that reflected the absurdity of their fabrication. They assumed deception could pass because they never considered that your history, your choices, and your spiritual alignment are all visible to those with eyes to perceive. And while they rehearsed their story to impress, to manipulate, to control perception, you had been building a life whose weight made their script collapse effortlessly. Proverbs 10:9 says, "Whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but whoever takes crooked paths will be found out." Your path, invisible to those unobservant, became the measuring rod that revealed their falsehoods. It is fascinating how calm truth is when it is anchored in character. Lies, on the other hand, carry a tremor, a subtle urgency, a twitch in energy, a vibration that betrays intent. You didn't need to counter their story. Your consistency, your grounded presence, and the quiet elegance with which you moved through life created a resonance incompatible with deception. Psalm 37:5 tells us, "Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act." That trust, lived day by day, became a shield they could not penetrate. Every false word they spoke bounced back, weakened, and eventually reflected upon them like a poorly thrown stone that rebounds to strike the thrower. And the irony is that your silence magnified the collapse. They never realized their script was being dismantled without intervention. Their surprise was palpable. They expected gullibility. They expected confusion. They assumed your quietness was weakness. But character, true, tested spiritual character, doesn't need to defend itself to be understood. It has a frequency. It resonates in the energy of rooms, in the perception of others, in the subconscious recognition of those attuned to integrity. Their lies became more desperate with each repetition because the world, even in small measure, could sense the incongruence between their story and your reality. People didn't need proof, they felt the misalignment, and their frantic attempts to maintain credibility only revealed the depth of their deception. Can we discern the weight of our actions even when no one is speaking against us? Your life, built in silence, became a cathedral of truth that exposed the hollowness of their narrative. You didn't boast about your victories. You didn't publicize your values. You simply lived them. And that living presence carried a light that even those unaware of the details could recognize. Ecclesiastes 7:1 reminds us, "A good name is better than fine perfume, and the day of death better than the day of birth." Your reputation, cultivated in quiet discipline, acted as a living document, impossible to fabricate against. Lies attempted to sit beside your integrity, but they were too flimsy. They bent, they cracked, and ultimately they shattered under the weight of your character. Huasi Rembrandt once said, "Choose only one master nature," and here the nature is your authentic self. The liar tried to bend reality to suit their ego, but the architecture of your life, the spiritual geometry you built in silence, was not theirs to rewrite. Every act of kindness, every moment of accountability, every quiet sacrifice became a structural pillar, a support beam, an invisible foundation against which deception could not stand. Your character is the architecture of heaven, Lies, no matter how elaborate, are brittle against divinely aligned presence. And the collapse wasn't subtle. It resonated loudly, reverberating through the circles that once entertained their story. Those who listened without bias immediately recognized the tension, the subtle cues in tone, hesitation in phrasing, and overcompensation in detail betrayed the liar. The listener, spiritually attuned, didn't just hear the story. They felt the misalignment, sensed the desperation, and knew instinctively that your life's integrity rendered the lie impotent. Psalm 15:1 declares, "Lord, who may dwell in your sacred tent? Who may live on your holy mountain?" Only those whose character resonates with truth can perceive the unspoken corruption in falsehood, and they became witnesses to the disintegration. Your rootedness became their undoing. The consistency of your life crushed their narrative before it even had room to breathe. It was invisible, yet undeniable. It was quiet, yet impossible to ignore. Those who underestimated your silent growth now feel the weight of your life, even from a distance. The liar cannot approach you with the same audacity, because every fiber of your being radiates a frequency that exposes misalignment. The lie didn't quietly die. It loudly announced its own failure. 1 Peter 3:16 reminds us, "Keep a clear conscience, so that those who speak maliciously against your good behavior in Christ may be ashamed of their slander." Your integrity carried the authority to silence falsehoods without lifting a finger. And now they remain distant, not out of fear of confrontation, but out of fear of exposure. Your character has become the lens through which they are measured, and measurement is merciless. They are acutely aware that you see clearly, that you discern precisely, and that your silent life is a testament they cannot alter. Their credibility has been compromised by proximity to truth. Your reputation defends itself. Your life, your consistency, your quiet diligence act as both shield and sword. And that is why they avoid you, not because of what you said or did, but because of the subtle, undeniable evidence of your character. How often do we forget that the life we live silently carries power more potent than any words we speak? Your consistency didn't just protect you, it revealed them. Their lie, fragile and desperate, crumbled in the presence of someone who is spiritually grounded. Your quiet life, lived with integrity, authority, and divine alignment, became the ultimate defense. And through it all, heaven's hand orchestrated the unraveling. Their narrative was powerless because it faced the incorruptible foundation of truth built in silence. Number 3. There comes a moment when those who weave lies realize they are speaking into the wrong current, the wrong vibration, the wrong life. They believed their audience would swallow their story whole, nod in agreement, and perhaps even embellish it for them. They assumed they had chosen a listener who would be gullible, unobservant, or disengaged. But they did not anticipate the quiet authority of someone armed not with words, but with silent truth. Evidence gathered over time, impressions recorded by observation, and memory catalogued by character. The moment the story left their lips, it collided with something they could not anticipate. A witness whose spiritual calibration was aligned with reality, whose discernment sliced through deception with surgical precision. Could it be that the truth we live quietly every day carries more weight than arguments ever could? This person, the one they underestimated, held receipts that weren't loud, that didn't shout, yet resonated like a bell in the liar's conscience. These were not physical documents, they were living memories, first-hand experiences, instances of your integrity, moments of consistency, evidence of your character, tested and proven over time. Every act of kindness you extended, every principled decision you made, every quiet moment in which you chose truth over convenience became a testament. Psalm 15:2-3 says, "The one who walks blamelessly and does what is right, who speaks the truth from their heart and does not slander with their tongue," and that very life had become a ledger against deceit. As they spoke, the listener didn't just hear the words, they measured them against the silent history of your life. They recalled the way you handled adversity, the way you elevated others without expectation, the subtle moments that revealed a strength of spirit and mind far beyond what a casual liar could account for. Your life had created an internal truth network. The liar's story attempted to overwrite it, but their narrative cracked under the sheer weight of consistency. They had assumed speaking first gave them advantage, but the listener already held the evidence. They didn't need to shout, argue, or confront aggressively. The calm presentation of fact, lived and observed, became a spiritual scalpel, cutting through every layer of fabrication. Hearing their own story dismantled in real time was a shock to their ego. They weren't prepared for it. They had rehearsed their narrative endlessly, confident that no one would have the perspective to counter it. But your life had already anticipated deception. You had built a silent armor, a lattice of truth, and it was now manifest through the discernment of the listener. Proverbs 14:15 says, "The simple believe anything, but the prudent give thought to their steps." They assumed simplicity. They encountered prudence. The embarrassment hit instantly. The shame followed. Confidence that once seemed unshakable trembled. Their voice wavered under the weight of unspoken observation. Every subtle pushback from the listener, every question, every pause, every recalibration revealed that their story could not survive the contrast with your documented character. And each time the liar attempted to recover, the quiet receipts grew stronger, highlighting the inconsistencies, revealing the manipulations, and shining a light on motives previously hidden. Do you recognize the subtle ways your own life records evidence of your integrity for the moments it will be needed? There is a psychological principle known as cognitive dissonance, the discomfort experienced when one's actions contradict observable reality. The liar, confident in the malleability of perception, found themselves trapped in their own contradictions. Every detail they had twisted to suit their narrative collided with the undeniable evidence of your consistency. Like Newton's third law, each lie encountered an equal and opposite force, the measured energy of truth embodied in the listener. The liar was unprepared for the magnitude of this reaction. Even those who didn't know you personally could sense the mismatch. Truth carries a vibration, a frequency that resonates beyond explanation, beyond evidence, beyond argument. Lies, no matter how cleverly dressed, carry a tremor, a subtle desperation, a discord that resonates unconsciously. Your life, your character, your consistent integrity acted like a spiritual metronome, setting the tempo of reality so precisely that falsehoods could not sustain themselves. 1 Timothy 6:14-15 reminds us to keep this command without spot or blame until the appearing of our Lord. And your life had, in effect, been keeping that command quietly, unassumingly, in preparation for such moments. The liar had attempted to manipulate, to bend narratives, to shape perception, but the wrong person was listening. And now they are avoiding you, not because you confronted them, but because someone else's witness confronted them. Your truth didn't need defending. Your life spoke volumes. And the realization that their deception had been thoroughly catalogued, silently witnessed, and internally verified hit them in ways that words could never articulate. Have you ever paused to consider how the life you quietly lead leaves traces that defend your truth without a single word? This unexpected witness, armed with nothing but memory, perception, and discernment, created a domino effect. One lie, once exposed, cannot be reassembled. One attempt to deceive, once reflected against integrity, cannot be masked. Their credibility crumbled, not because of confrontation, but because the juxtaposition with living character revealed every crack. Your character, built silently, consistently, profoundly, became the foundation that dismantled the lie. Psalm 34:13 says, "Keep your tongue from evil and your lips from telling lies." But even beyond words, your life embodies that principle, serving as living evidence against falsehood. And so the liar is left in a state of avoidance. They cannot face you because the witness now sees them clearly. They cannot manipulate the narrative because the contrast with your life is unavoidable. They cannot regain their composure because the evidence exists independent of their desire. They are not simply embarrassed, they are exposed. Their lie didn't just fail. It was confronted, corrected, and revealed all at once. And heaven allowed it to unfold quietly, like a revelation that speaks through the alignment of truth itself. As we reflect on this, ask yourself, how often do I build a life that can silently defend me when others speak falsely? Am I aware of the subtle ways integrity records itself in every action I take? And how might heaven be arranging moments where the quiet strength I embody becomes my shield and testimony? Number 4. There's a strange irony in the way truth reveals itself. It rarely storms in. It slips through tone, through urgency, through the vibration of words that say more than their speaker intends. That's what happened here. When they opened their mouth to lie about you, it wasn't their story that betrayed them. It was their emotion. They thought they could mask bitterness as concern, disguise envy as discernment, and cloak competition in casual conversation. But heaven has a way of letting frequencies speak louder than facts. The person they chose to talk to didn't need divine revelation to sense something was off. They didn't need prophecy to detect the tremor. It was in the cadence, the energy, the too sharp tone that carried a kind of agitation, too intense for a subject that was supposedly not that deep. What unsettled the listener wasn't the lie itself, it was the charge behind it. And that charge revealed what words tried to conceal: obsession. Because people who are at peace don't speak with venom. People who are free don't sound burdened by someone else's existence. And people who are secure don't build monologues around another person's name. Proverbs 26:24 says, "Enemies disguise themselves with their lips, but in their hearts they harbor deceit." The liar's voice betrayed the truth long before their story did. The listener could feel the energy pulsing between syllables, the flicker of insecurity, the tremor of rivalry, the residue of something far deeper than casual dislike. It wasn't even subtle, it was saturated. Every exaggerated detail, every overemphasized flaw, every frantic attempt to justify their perspective only made one truth louder. Their spirit was disturbed by yours. You weren't in the room. You weren't even part of the conversation. But your name burned in their throat like it demanded release. And the listener felt that. The sudden shift in tone, the urgency to criticize without reason, the eagerness to volunteer negativity unprovoked. It all became its own confession. You see, heaven often exposes envy not through confrontation, but through contrast. Your light, your composure, your growth, they became mirrors that made their insecurity impossible to hide. Have you ever noticed how truth doesn't always need words? It only needs energy to reveal itself. The listener's silence grew heavy. Their eyes softened in recognition. What they saw wasn't a storyteller. It was a soul unraveling under the weight of comparison. Each sentence revealed more than the liar intended. Their criticism didn't sound objective. It sounded emotional. Their tone didn't carry authority, it carried ache. Their words didn't wound your image, they revealed the fractures in their own. Psalm 64:8 says, "Their own tongues will ruin them, all who see them will shake their heads in scorn." And in that moment, that scripture was living itself out before the listener's eyes. It's strange how obsession hides beneath pretense. It wears the mask of indifference but speaks with urgency. It tries to sound analytical, but bleeds emotion. The liar couldn't hide their fixation because fixation has a frequency, sharp, repetitive, restless. They inserted your name where it didn't belong, pulled you into conversations you never initiated, and spoke about you as if your existence personally offended their comfort. The listener felt it instantly, the energy of someone haunted by what they can't replicate. There is a term in psychology called projection bias, when a person attributes their own internal state to someone else without realizing it. That's exactly what happened here. Every insult they hurled at you was really a confession of what they feared within themselves. They accused you of arrogance to hide their envy, of manipulation to mask their control, of distance to cover their insecurity. Their words were never about you, they were reflections of their internal turmoil. Romans 2:1 says, "You have no excuse, you who pass judgment on someone else, for at whatever point you judge another, you are condemning yourself." And that spiritual law was unfolding in real time. As they continued speaking, the listener started connecting dots, how often your name surfaced, unprovoked, how charged the tone became every time you were mentioned, how their demeanor shifted at the very sound of you. What the liar didn't know was that spiritual people read between breaths. They measure motives by energy coherence. When someone's words and emotions vibrate in different directions, the truth becomes glaring. Have you ever felt someone's jealousy before they spoke it? That's discernment at work, and it never lies. Even the rhythm of their sentences betrayed them. The pauses were too tense, the transitions too forced, like a symphony trying to hide dissonance within melody. Johann Sebastian Bach once said, "The final aim of all music is none other than the glory of God and the refreshment of the soul." But in this case, the liar's voice was music gone off key, a dissonant song that revealed its own corruption. Their attempt to manipulate tone only amplified the wrong frequency. Truth has harmony. Lies, no matter how well rehearsed, carry noise. By the time the conversation ended, the listener saw everything clearly. They realized the story wasn't about you, it was about the storyteller's inability to handle your light. The more you grew, the more their ego trembled. The more you stayed in peace, the more their insecurity screamed. The more heaven elevated you quietly, the more they needed to manufacture a reason for their discomfort. But jealousy cannot be disguised forever. 1 John 1-5 says, "God is light. In him there is no darkness at all." And your life, anchored in that light, made every shadow around you visible. Now they can't face you, not because you confronted them, but because someone else saw what they were desperate to hide. They know the listener caught it, the tremor, the fixation, the envy clothed in politeness. They know their obsession was exposed, and once obsession is seen, it cannot be unseen. The listener now views them differently, not as a victim of your supposed wrongdoing, but as someone tormented by their own comparison. The aftermath is quiet but powerful. The liar avoids eye contact, changes topics when your name arises, and trembles at the memory of their own transparency. Their lie didn't just fail, it became the spotlight that illuminated the shadow they were trying to protect. The truth wasn't just revealed, it was felt. So, chosen one, rest in this peace. You never had to fight the rumor. Heaven allowed energy itself to testify for you. Every false word carried its own evidence of envy. Every accusation reflected more about them than it ever could about you, and the lesson remains eternal. Truth doesn't chase noise, it lets frequency expose frequency. Ask yourself this: how often does someone's reaction to your peace reveal their bondage? How many times has the tone, not the words, told you everything you needed to know? And can you trust heaven enough to let discernment, not defense, fight your battles? You don't need to confront, you don't need to clarify, you simply need to remain light, and light, by nature, reveals everything that cannot stand beside it. Number 5. When they opened their mouth to wound you, they did something far stranger than attack. They illuminated themselves. Their attempt to tarnish your name became an unintended confession, a luminous spotlight on motives they thought were safely hidden. What they meant to be an exposure of you turned instead into evidence of what was eating them alive: bitterness, jealousy, a fragile pride that needed someone else's shadow to feel large. In the pause after their words, the room did not judge you, it watched them, and in that watching, the truth quietly gathered like dew, impossible to hide, impossible to deny. You have lived in a way that leaves a trail of quiet proof. Every choice you made when nobody watched, every time you loved without expectation, every instance you honored truth over convenience, those moments are your receipts. When their voice circled back to your name like a wound they could not stop picking, those receipts read themselves aloud to anyone listening closely. The listener did not walk away thinking less of you. They walked away piecing together a pattern, the liar's obsession, the insistence, the needless repetition. Those were the clues. Matthew 5:16 says, "Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven." Your light shone, and it made the liar's darkness obvious. Listen, people who care little do not linger on someone's life in that tone. People who are secure do not need to rehearse your faults. The way they kept returning to you, layering accusation atop accusation, revealed the true architecture of their motive. Their energy betrayed them, anxiety threaded through arrogance, resentment masked as righteous concern. You did not need to defend yourself. Their own emphasis did the work for you. Galatians 6-7 holds up a simple law. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. They sowed loudness and saw harvest of shame. The listener began to notice the repetitive signals, how the liar deployed the same phrases, how they exaggerated harmless facts into scandal, how comparisons slipped into every sentence. Those are not the marks of someone reporting truth. They are the fingerprints of someone protecting a fragile narrative. You have a steadiness about you that makes falsehood look clumsy. Your consistency is a kind of gravity. Truth gravitates toward it. Lies fall away. The more the liar tried to animate their accusation, the more their own pattern emerged. A habit of deflection, a history of one-sided rivalry, an inability to measure themselves without measuring you. James 1:19's counsel, everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, was being violated in real time, and the listener felt that violation as a moral tremor. There is a psychological current here called projection, to accuse another of the very wounds you carry inside. That projection is a clumsy, noisy thing. It leaves traces like footprints in wet cement. When the liar accused you of arrogance, their voice trembled with the very insecurity they feared. When they called you manipulative, the listener noticed how their sentences circled back to control. You have likely seen this before. A person obsessed cannot speak without giving themselves away. They turn their pain into a script and hope the audience will play along. But you have become a living archive of integrity, and people who care, those with eyes to see, read the record easily. How many times have you watched someone's reaction to your piece reveal their own bondage? How often has the intensity of another's criticism told you more about their heart than it ever did about your actions? Can you trust the quiet evidence your life builds, even when noise fills the air? There is an artistic truth in this phenomenon. Poet Rumi once murmured that the wound is the place where the light enters you. Here, their wound expressed itself through obsession. Your life, however, has been the place where the light entered and reshaped you. In the same way, the sacred chant tradition, Hildegard of Bingen's soaring melodies that carry clarity, has a quality of unmasking. A clear note reveals dissonance. Their speech was dissonant. Your life is a clear tone that makes dissonance unbearable to hear. This is not melodrama, it is harmonic law. Scientifically, we might call what happened a feedback collapse. The liar emitted a high-energy signal, panic, fixation, and the environment returned that signal amplified back to them, not to you. Their narrative could not stabilize because it lacked the internal coherence your life exhibited. Newton's law of reciprocal force is poetry here. Whatever they tried to throw at your name rebounded with equal awkwardness, landing squarely on the speaker. Micah 6-8's ancient summons, act justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your God, reads like a test. The liar failed in front of witnesses. Two lessons float up from this moment like clear breath. First, your silence is not a vacuum, it is an archive. The life you live quietly becomes evidence that works while you rest. Second, people who attack you repeatedly are often defending a story about themselves, not correcting a truth about you. Those lessons are not merely observations, they are keys. Use them to guard your heart and let them instruct how you allocate trust. You did not craft a weapon, you cultivated a witness, and that witness, your life, forced their motives into the light. Now they keep distance because every meeting with you threatens a reminder. The day they tried to bury you, they unearthed their own shame. They realize that proximity to you will only recall the moment they failed to hide themselves. That awareness feels like a debt they cannot easily pay. Before the curtain falls, I invite you to fold this into your daily rhythm. When falsehood rises, let your life continue its quiet testimony. When obsession parades as concern, do not drown in rebuttal. Allow the architecture of your character to do the work. And if this message connected to your soul, share it in the comments. Your insight might be the mirror someone else needs. As we close, feel this blessing settle into your chest. May your peace be an anchor, may your integrity be an immovable refuge, and may the light that rests within you continue to reveal what must be healed and to shield what must be kept sacred. Go gently, chosen one. Heaven's work in you is both witness and shelter. Number 6. Long before your name ever crossed their lips, the person they lied to had already been weighing their spirit. There are people who do more listening than speaking, not for gossip, but for truth, and this listener had a file in their heart marked "Beware." Small inconsistencies, theatrical reactions, a habitual bitterness that trailed this liar like a storm cloud, these were the quiet data points the listener had been collecting. They hadn't announced their concern, they had simply been watching the pattern. Might it be that sometimes the world prepares witnesses long before slander arrives? So when the liar tried to plant a new story about you, they walked right into the dossier they themselves had contributed to. They thought they were adding information. They were actually corroborating the listener's suspicion. The voice that rose to smear you only confirmed what had been quietly noted. This person's spirit is unsettled, their motives tangled and reactive, their kindness often performative. The lie did not land as a new pebble on the path. It struck the cracked foundation already marked by years of small betrayals. Matthew 7:16 says, "You will recognize them by their fruits." The listener already saw the fruit. The liar's attempt at drama only harvested more evidence against themselves. There is an economy of credibility in human relationships. People build trust like deposits in an account. Character makes withdrawals and deposits consistent over time. This listener had long been making mental deposits of caution. The liar's narrative became the final withdrawal that bankrupted their credibility. They did not need to investigate. They simply matched the new story against the ledger of previous behaviors, and everything failed to reconcile. Proverbs 11:3 reminds us, "The integrity of the upright guides them, but the crookedness of the treacherous destroys them." Here, the crookedness destroyed its own script. What the liar failed to anticipate was how quickly an attentive spirit can connect dots that casual ears never notice. Tone had always sounded forced. Excuses always arrived a beat too soon. Compliments often contained clause. The listener had catalogued these micro-episodes, the incomplete apologies, the stray resentful comments, the way they smiled with one eye and calculated with the other. So when slander emerged, the listener heard not a story about you, but a chorus of replayed motifs from the liar's repertoire. The more they spoke, the more the liar's true pattern played out. Scientific language names this process as a rise in signal-to-noise ratio. The listener's long-term observations increased the signal of truth around the liar's behaviors, so that any new noise, the lie, could not be distinguished as credible. The liar assumed novelty equals advantage. Instead, novelty became an alarm. Their fake narrative caused cognitive dissonance for anyone who had tracked them. The new tale did not align with past evidence, and the human mind hates unresolved contradiction. Luke 6:45 warns, "For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks." Their abundance of trouble spoke louder than the accusation they deployed. Now, consider how projection functions. When someone's inner weather is stormy, they often mistake another person's calm for a provocation. In trying to smear you, they actually projected their unrest into your name. The listener, attuned to this dynamic, heard projection rather than reportage. The liar's act became a confession, and confession redrew the moral landscape. Who now looked like a victim and who looked like an architect of their own turmoil? The answer was immediate. The liar's mask didn't slip, it shattered. Have you ever watched how the pattern of someone's life changes the way you hear their words? Have you ever sat in silence and let the recordings of character play louder than the most persuasive speech? And can you feel the difference between a voice that reports truth and a voice that broadcasts a wound? These questions are not rhetorical exercises. They are the compass that orients spiritual discernment. Art sometimes reveals what speech cannot. Poet William Blake once wrote that to see a world in a grain of sand is to perceive the hidden architecture of reality. In this case, the listener had been seeing a world in the liar's small gestures long before the lie was offered. The tiny moments, an offhand joke, a resentful glance, a hurried rumor, were the grains that made the whole picture clear. Handel's sacred choruses teach us about collective resonance. When one instrument is off-key for too long, the chorus adjusts, and the out-of-tune voice is heard for what it is. So it was with the liar. The chorus of witnesses adjusted, and their falsity rang out. There is also a psycho-spiritual law at work: homeostatic imbalance. People who habitually create drama do so to restore an internal sense of control. When that drama is used to target you, it reveals the liar's own quest to rebalance an inner chaos. The listener had seen this rebalancing tactic before and would not be fooled by it now. James 1:26 cautions, "If anyone thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue, he deceives his heart." The liar's tongue betrayed their heart, and the listener's prior vigilance closed the case in silence. The consequence is social isolation. The liar now avoids you not out of fear of rebuttal, but out of dread of recognition. They cannot face your presence because that presence calls to mind the moment when their mask was irrevocably removed in front of the wrong witness. They feel exposed, not because you named them, but because someone who had been watching named them silently in their stead. Matthew 10:26 declares, "Nothing is concealed that will not be disclosed." What was concealed in their interior life is now disclosed by their own words. Two clear lessons arrive from this collapse. First, vigilant compassion matters. Those who watch without rushing to judgment can safeguard truth in ways that words alone cannot. Second, your quiet consistency is a safeguard. You do not need to manufacture defenders. You need only be the kind of person who registers as credible over time. This kind of character building is spiritual architecture. It will defend you when slander arrives. Rest now, chosen one. You did not have to respond. The listener's discernment, accumulated like a slow, careful witness, did what needed doing. In the hush after the revelation, may your heart recognize that heaven often prepares allies in the waiting. May the peace that held you in silence now settle deeper, and may you walk forward knowing your life's ledger is greater than any rumor. Number 7. There are moments in life when a lie wears its own weight so obviously that it crumbles under the pressure of its own exaggeration. This is one of those moments. When the liar opened their mouth, they didn't just try to distort the truth, they tried to perform it. And in that performance, the lie became not just a fabrication, but a dramatic production. A lie, when it is spoken from a wounded heart, doesn't simply tell a story. It seeks to convince, to persuade, to manufacture an image that feels as real as the truth. But when something is too rehearsed, too embellished, too layered with unnecessary details, it raises a flag, loud and clear. When someone speaks the truth, there is simplicity in their words. There is clarity. There is no need to impress, no need to dress the story in unnecessary robes. Truth speaks plainly because it doesn't need to be manipulated. But lies, on the other hand, often come with effort. The liar's tale wasn't a casual recounting of events, it was a monologue. Every detail felt forced, every phrase packed with details no one asked for, every pause too dramatic for something that was supposed to be trivial. The intensity didn't match the topic, the effort didn't match the simplicity of the event, and the listener, sharp and attuned to the energy of truth, immediately felt something was off. Have you ever noticed how people who are telling the truth don't need to weave a web of complexity around their story? How do you feel when your own words are simple, natural, and to the point, compared to when you are trying too hard to explain something? Why does truth flow so easily, while lies demand performance? The lie had a structure to it, almost as if it were crafted for an audience. Each line, too polished, too practiced, felt like it had been rehearsed in front of a mirror. Every exaggerated expression, every overemphasized detail made the situation feel like a stage performance. It was as though they were auditioning for the role of a victim, not simply telling a story. Their delivery screamed performance, and that was the first clue that their words were not built from genuine emotion, but from insecurity. People who speak the truth don't need to perform. Their stories come from a place of honesty, and honesty doesn't rely on embellishment. But when someone is lying, they often overcompensate to make the tale sound more convincing. They sell their narrative with theatrics, as though the listener's belief is a performance they must win. The listener could feel it immediately. The moment they heard the overly detailed, rehearsed delivery, they knew something was off. And that feeling of something being off is what we call discernment. The more the liar spoke, the more the listener began to sense the desperation behind the performance. The story became less and less believable, not because the facts were questioned, but because the effort behind the narrative was so blatant. There was too much energy invested in painting you a certain way. And whenever that much energy is spent on creating a negative perception of someone, it's usually a sign that insecurity is lurking just beneath the surface. Have you ever caught yourself trying to convince someone of something because you were afraid they wouldn't believe it otherwise? That kind of need for validation becomes a weight, and it exposes itself in ways we may not even realize. The lie was too tidy, too detailed, too perfectly crafted, and that neatness is often the first sign of an incomplete story. When a story is too organized, when every piece is placed so carefully, it's often because the truth doesn't fit quite so neatly into place. That's when the listener, who had been quietly observing, began to realize the liar wasn't just trying to make you look bad. They were trying to protect something else, something hidden beneath the surface. They were attempting to project their own insecurities, their own fears, their own unresolved emotions onto you. They wanted to deflect attention from their own flaws and onto your name. But that desire to control perception made their lie feel less like truth and more like a fragile facade. At what point does the effort to convince others of your truth become more revealing about your insecurity than about the situation at hand? How often do we find ourselves trying to convince others of our worth or intentions when deep down we feel the need for validation? And can we recognize when a story is too perfect to be true? As they continued talking, the listener quietly began connecting the dots. The exaggerations, the unnecessary drama, the overemphasis on every flaw, it wasn't about you at all. It was about their reaction to you. The more they spoke, the more it became clear that this wasn't a simple accusation. This was a projection of something far deeper, something unresolved within them. The obsession with you wasn't about your actions. It was about how your light made them feel insecure in their darkness. The more they talked, the more their words became less about your character and more about their own vulnerabilities exposed through their jealousy. The more they attempted to tear you down, the more they lifted their own mask to reveal their internal struggle. What happens when we're so consumed with others that we forget to examine what's truly driving our feelings toward them? Why is it that when someone's light irritates our darkness, we immediately seek to dim it. And when do we realize that our obsession with someone else's behavior is actually a reflection of our own unhealed wounds? And then it happened. The listener's perception shifted. What began as an attempt to defame you became a mirror showing the liar's true self. Their behavior no longer seemed like a casual observation, it seemed like a reaction, a compulsion, a fixation. It wasn't about you at all. It was about how they couldn't handle the peace you carried, the authenticity you embodied, and the power of your consistency. The more they attacked, the more they revealed their own emotional instability. Now, the liar is avoiding you, not because of anything you did, but because of everything they know they revealed about themselves. They thought their lie was a simple weapon, but it became a boomerang that came back to strike them. Their attempt to destroy your reputation didn't just fail, it exposed their own vulnerabilities in a way that can't be undone. The listener now sees them differently, not as the person they tried to paint you as, but as someone who was desperately trying to justify their own weaknesses. The very thing they tried to bury their insecurity is now the thing that everyone can see clearly. When the lie became a performance, it could no longer pretend to be anything other than what it was, a desperate effort to hide the liar's own shame. The more the story grew, the more fragile it became. The more effort they put into convincing the listener, the more desperate their insecurity appeared. And now, in the quiet aftermath, the liar is left with the painful truth that they can no longer mask. Their lie didn't damage your reputation, it damaged theirs. Number 8. They thought they had it all figured out. When they dropped their lie, they assumed it would settle into the darkness of gossip, unchallenged and unnoticed. They expected the listener to accept their words without question, to believe the narrative they carefully crafted, and to walk away with their version of the truth. But what they didn't anticipate was the listener's maturity. Instead of rushing to spread the story, instead of reacting emotionally or getting swept up in the drama, the listener did the one thing that liars fear the most. They came to you directly. No noise, no chaos, just a simple, honest question that pierced the veil of deception. How often do we fail to recognize the power in direct, quiet honesty? Why does it take so little for truth to reveal itself when the question is asked in peace? And how often does the mere act of asking challenge the narrative we've been told? The liar's carefully constructed story started to collapse in that very moment. They expected their lie to remain hidden, to fester undisturbed, but the listener's straightforward inquiry turned the tables. It removed every layer of protection the liar had worked so hard to build. It stripped away the element of secrecy, the shadow where lies thrive. The moment you clarified the truth without anger, without matching the energy of their narrative, everything changed. The truth stood bare, and the lie stood exposed, vulnerable. In that simple exchange, the listener saw the difference between your calm honesty and the liar's shaky performance. Truth, when presented without the need for defense, has an inherent power. Truth doesn't need drama. It doesn't need to be dressed up in layers of complexity or urgency. It simply is. The listener was able to sense that right away. When someone comes to you directly, with clear intent to understand, it removes the fog of miscommunication. It lets clarity pierce through. As the listener observed, it became crystal clear who was telling the truth and who was desperately trying to stay relevant by creating drama. They didn't expect that kind of follow-up. The liar thought their narrative would go unchallenged, that it would land unscathed, with no one questioning the story. What they wanted was blind loyalty, unquestioned acceptance, and the unspoken understanding that their words would carry weight without ever being verified. But what they received instead was accountability. Proverbs 12:19 says, "Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue lasts only a moment." And in that moment, the liar realized that their lie no longer had the foundation to stand on. The liar's expectation was to stir emotion, to provoke reactions, to have the listener consumed by the story they created. They counted on gossip to spread, on drama to perpetuate, on silence to protect their deception. But when the listener came directly to you with respect and clarity, it was like a light breaking through darkness. And that simple, measured act of asking for truth terrified the liar. Their story was no longer in their control. The narrative was now being compared to reality, and reality, your truth, was standing firm, unshaken. The liar's stomach dropped, not because they feared confrontation, but because they knew the moment the truth was clarified, their credibility would be shattered. Once that damage is done, it's impossible to undo. Proverbs 14:5 teaches us that a faithful witness does not lie, but a false witness breathes out lies. And now, someone else had become a witness to their deceit, someone who could see through the performance they had created. The liar's carefully constructed image started to crumble as the listener saw through their need to fabricate. Have you ever watched how one moment of clarity can shift an entire conversation? How often have you experienced that feeling when truth is questioned calmly, and suddenly everything you thought was certain begins to unravel? And in that moment, when the truth was spoken, can you feel how it leaves nothing to be distorted? In the moment when the truth traveled from your mouth and into the listener's heart, the liar was exposed not by you, but by their own lack of authenticity. The more they tried to manipulate, the more the listener saw the cracks. They knew something was wrong, but they couldn't place it until they heard your answer. The directness, the peace, the absence of defensive energy. It was a sharp contrast to the liar's frantic attempt to manipulate. It was not just your words that stood in defense of the truth, but your entire manner, your calmness in the face of their chaos. As the liar realized the damage to their credibility, they began to avoid you. Not because of the confrontation, but because they now understood the magnitude of what had happened. Their story had been torn down not by your reaction, but by your silence, your truth, your willingness to let clarity speak for itself. They knew that their facade was no longer believable. The listener had seen the difference between genuine integrity and the desperate effort to twist reality. And that is the moment when panic hits, because once credibility is gone, it cannot be restored. What is it about truth that makes deception so fragile in comparison? Why do we often underestimate the power of stillness and clarity? And how much peace can we find when we let the truth speak for itself, without feeling the need to match the noise of falsehood? Now, they avoid you because they know they've lost control. The truth has already traveled faster than their lie. They feel the shift, the growing mistrust, the realization that their mask has slipped in front of someone who saw through it. They can no longer pretend innocence. They can no longer play the victim. The world now sees the inconsistency between their words and their actions. They wanted to distort the truth, but in doing so, they exposed themselves. Nothing terrifies a liar more than when their performance is called into question, not with aggression, not with a fight, but with a quiet request for truth. And that is what happened here. They didn't expect the listener to be calm, direct, and wise enough to ask. They expected a reaction, not an investigation. But your truth, clear, direct, unembellished, has already won. Number 9. There is a strange, almost invisible power in truth. It doesn't scream, it doesn't chase, it simply is. And when the lie they told about you boomeranged back to them, it wasn't your confrontation that shook them, it was the quiet weight of your truth pressing on their spirit in ways they couldn't escape. It's one thing to speak a lie behind someone's back, to hide in the shadows of deception, but when the moment comes to stand face to face with the person you tried to destroy, something shifts. It's like a divine spotlight, revealing every crack, every flaw, every wound they tried to bury beneath their words. Have you ever felt the weight of someone's guilt before they even said a word? How do we respond when we encounter someone whose energy betrays their actions? And can you sense when someone's spirit becomes uneasy in the presence of truth, even if their words remain silent? Your presence is not just the absence of falsehood, it is the presence of truth itself. And truth has a way of doing what lies cannot. It exposes, it reveals, it digs up what people tried to bury. When they realized their lie didn't stay in the dark, when they felt the truth rise like a tide that couldn't be held back, they couldn't meet your eyes anymore. Guilt isn't always loud. In fact, it rarely is. But when it rises, it speaks loudly in ways words never could. It shows up in the avoidance of your glance. It tightens their body language, stiffening their posture, making them move as if their every action is being examined under a magnifying glass. The energy shifts in the room, and the liar feels it deep in their bones, even if they refuse to acknowledge it. Truth doesn't need to confront it, simply exists. And when the light of truth is in the room, the shadows of falsehood are exposed, and they have nowhere to hide. People underestimate how loud guilt can be without a single word being spoken. It's in the way they look at the ground when they should be looking you in the eye. It's in the way their smile falters, not reaching their eyes. It's in the way their words start to stumble and their voice betrays them, quivering under the weight of their own dishonesty. The liar didn't need to confess. Their spirit confessed for them. You didn't have to call them out or point a finger. Your very presence, your quiet confidence, was enough to expose what they tried to bury. Every time you entered the room, the liar's energy shifted. Every time you spoke, their discomfort grew. The weight of their own guilt pressed down on them, and it was a weight they could not shrug off. It wasn't you confronting them, it was their conscience, struggling under the pressure of being exposed. They may have thought they had gotten away with it, but when they stood before you, they realized their lie was a shadow that couldn't escape your light. What happens to us when we are forced to face the truth we tried to hide? How do we react when we are in the presence of someone who can see through the facade we've built? And how often do we avoid the mirror that reflects not only our image, but our hidden truths? They know you. They know how your spirit reads people. They know you can sense shifts in energy, notice the tension in a room, and pick up on the subtle nuances of someone's behavior. And that knowledge terrifies them because your presence is like a mirror that reflects everything they don't want anyone to see. The jealousy, the insecurity, the guilt. It's not that you pointed it out to them, it's that your very presence magnified it in a way they couldn't escape. Now they avoid you. Not because you called them out, not because you confronted them directly, but because your very existence in the same space makes their guilt impossible to hide. Every time they look at you, they are reminded of the lie they told, the person they tried to tarnish, and the truth they desperately tried to avoid. You didn't accuse them. You didn't demand anything from them. Your energy did the work. Your stillness and clarity held up a mirror they couldn't look away from. And when they tried to keep their facade in place, it cracked under the weight of their own accountability. There is a deep spiritual law at play here. When a lie boomerangs, it doesn't simply return with truth, it returns with accountability. And accountability has a way of pressing on the heart in a way that cannot be ignored. Their lie didn't just fail, it highlighted their weakness. It revealed the emptiness behind their words and their actions. Psalm 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." And in that moment, their spirit, crushed by the weight of guilt, could not bear to look at you any longer. Your truth had forced them to face their own failure, and they couldn't stand in the light of it. They thought they could deceive you, manipulate perception, and walk away unscathed. But they didn't anticipate the power of your presence. They didn't anticipate the way your spirit would expose their lies. Now, every time they see you, they are reminded that they tried to destroy you with their words, but in doing so, they only destroyed their own reputation. Their integrity was cracked, and they know it. As they retreat, not from anger or pride, but from fear of exposure, ask yourself this: how often have we avoided the presence of truth because it forced us to face the parts of ourselves we'd rather keep hidden? Can we remember a time when our own energy revealed the truth of a situation before words were even spoken? And how powerful is it when we can stand in our truth so fully that others' lies can no longer survive in our presence. Truth is an unwavering force, and when you stand in it, you become a mirror to others, reflecting not just their image, but their intentions, their heart. And for those who live in deception, your presence is the one thing they cannot control. It is the one thing they cannot escape. They are avoiding you now, not because of what you said, but because they cannot hide the truth they tried to bury. You didn't call them out, your spirit did, and that is a revelation they can't escape. Number 10. There's a powerful moment that comes when a lie no longer just falls apart, it turns back on the liar. They may think their deception is a clever way to turn the tide, to paint you as the villain, to fabricate a motive that never existed. Their plan often relies on the idea that others will believe the lie because it fits a narrative they've created, a narrative where you are the one with something to gain from their downfall. But what they didn't count on was the listener's ability to see beyond the words, to sense the deeper currents of motivation. They didn't anticipate the clarity with which the listener could see the truth of your life, your energy, your focus. And what became clear was that you had absolutely nothing to gain from their destruction. Have you ever felt how the energy you carry speaks louder than your words? How can we begin to trust that the truth we embody will always rise above the lies told about us? And how often do we forget that the absence of motive is sometimes the most powerful evidence of truth? The listener, sharp and observant, didn't just hear the words, they felt the energy behind them. They didn't just hear the accusations, they felt the desperation. They didn't just listen to the story, they sensed the weight of the liar's hidden motives. What became immediately obvious was that your life, your path, your energy, your alignment was so clean and purposeful that there was no room for petty destruction. You weren't plotting against anyone. You weren't trying to undermine anyone's progress. Your focus has always been forward, upward, and inward. There is no space in your life for the games others play, for the drama they create. That clarity of purpose is impossible to fake. Meanwhile, the liar's motives were exposed in every exaggerated detail, every unnecessary addition to the story. The listener didn't need to dig deep to spot them. It was in the little things, the way the liar spoke, the little too much they added to the story, the unnecessary dramatic pauses, the way they desperately tried to make you look like a villain. Every word was soaked in jealousy, insecurity, and a thirst for validation. Their resentment wasn't subtle, it was bubbling to the surface, and they couldn't contain it. This wasn't about you anymore. This was about their own unresolved feelings of inadequacy, their need to feel superior, their constant competition with you, even if they had never voiced it. Truth is more than just what is said. It comes from the energy behind the words. And the liar's energy was screaming desperation, obsession, and a deep-seated need to make you look bad so they could feel better. The contrast couldn't have been clearer. Your calm, steady presence versus their frantic, reactive energy. Your life had no hidden agenda. Their words were dripping with motives and bitterness. In that instant, the lie lost all power, not because of your defense, but because the very motive behind it was exposed for everyone to see. The listener didn't have to go digging for the truth. It was laid bare in the differences between your energy and the liar's. You appeared calm, composed, unaffected by their attempts to smear your name. They, on the other hand, were anxious, reactive, and over-invested in a story that didn't even belong to them. Every added detail, every unnecessary comparison only made the lie less believable. Their effort to destroy your character had, in the end, destroyed their own. What happens when we recognize that our energy alone can reveal the truth of a situation? How often do we let others' frantic attempts to manipulate us cause us to lose sight of the steadiness of our own truth? And how do we recognize when someone's obsession with us is not a reflection of who we are, but of their own inner turmoil? And in that split second, the narrative flipped. The lie didn't reflect poorly on you, it reflected poorly on them. The liar's credibility was shattered not by anything you did, but by the energy they put into creating a false story. Their desperate need to drag you down became the very thing that exposed their own motivations. It became clear who was projecting their insecurities onto you, who was threatened by your peace, and who had nothing better to do than to tear someone else down to lift themselves up. Now, the liar is avoiding you not because of something you did, but because they know their own motives are transparent to anyone with discernment. They realize that the world now sees them differently, and the truth is only a step away from being revealed in full. They know that if the wrong person chooses to expose them, their credibility will be destroyed once and for all. They have no escape. They can no longer pretend that their version of events is anything but a desperate performance. The lie didn't just fail, it shone a spotlight on the very thing the liar tried to hide: their envy, their insecurity, and their need for validation. When you live a life aligned with truth, when you have nothing to gain from someone else's downfall, the truth has a way of revealing the hidden motives of those who would seek to destroy you. And now, the liar knows this. They know their motives are exposed, and they know the world is watching. How does it feel to know that the truth we carry within us cannot be distorted by others' lies? How do we embrace the peace of knowing that our integrity is our greatest shield, and nothing can harm us when we stand in it? And how often do we forget that the more effort someone puts into tearing us down, the more they expose about themselves? You didn't need to fight back. You didn't need to defend yourself. Your life, your focus, your integrity did all the work for you. And now, the liar is left with nothing but their own exposed truth. The truth always finds its way to the surface, and when it does, it's more powerful than any lie. Number 11. There are times when a lie doesn't just fail to land, it boomerangs back to the liar with an undeniable force, revealing their true self in ways they never expected. That's exactly what happened here. The story they tried to attach to your name didn't carry your energy. It didn't carry your essence. It didn't match the way you move through the world, the way you handle conflict, or the way you exist. Instead, it sounded like a projection, a desperate attempt to distort the truth. And in doing so, it exposed them more than it ever could have exposed you. Have you ever noticed how the energy behind someone's words often speaks louder than the words themselves? How do we begin to sense when something isn't quite right, even if we can't put it into words? And how often do we underestimate the power of our essence, our very being, to reveal the truth, even when others try to distort it? The moment they spoke, the lie didn't fit the truth of your life. It didn't match your frequency, your moral compass, or your emotional signature. Every part of the story they told about you, no matter how dramatic or detailed, sounded like it belonged to them, not you. The insecurities, the emotional patterns, the fears, the character flaws, their projections were woven into every line. They thought they were painting a picture of you, but in reality, they were drawing a self-portrait. Every stroke of their narrative revealed something about their own inner world, not yours. Spiritually, people can feel when something is off. Even if they can't articulate it, they sense it in their bones. It's like a sixth sense, an intuitive knowing that tells us when a story doesn't match the energy of the person telling it. Proverbs 12:19 reminds us, "Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue lasts only a moment." Truth has a vibration that people can feel, and when it's misaligned, it's like a discordant note in a symphony. The listener didn't need to know every detail of the story to feel it. They didn't need to see a flaw in your character to sense the dissonance. They simply knew, deep down, that something didn't match. What happens inside us when we hear something that doesn't resonate with our spirit? How do we feel when a story is being told about us that doesn't align with what we know to be true? And can we trust that our inner compass is always pointing us toward the truth, even when others try to manipulate the narrative? And that's when the shift happened. The listener didn't absorb the lie. They traced the energy back to its source, the liar. Instead of seeing an attack on you, they saw a confession disguised as an accusation. The liar's words didn't carry the weight of truth. They carried the weight of unresolved emotion, of internal turmoil that they couldn't hide. When they tried to tear you down, the very energy behind their story revealed the truth about who they really were. Their own bitterness, jealousy, and insecurity came through, not because they meant for it to, but because it's impossible to hide that kind of energy when it's being projected onto someone else. This is the spiritual boomerang at work. The moment someone uses your name to project their bitterness, their truth is reflected right back at them. They tried to harm you with their words, but your energy, your essence, pushed the narrative back to the sender. You didn't need to defend yourself. Your alignment, your consistency, your peace, everything you have worked for defended you. Psalm 18:2 says, "The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge." And that is the essence of what was happening here. You didn't need to fight. You didn't need to engage in the drama they tried to create. Your character stood as a fortress around your truth, and it made their lie fall apart. You are not just a passive observer in your own life. You are an active creator of the energy you carry. And when your energy aligns with truth, it becomes a shield against deception. The liar didn't expect that. They thought their narrative would stick, that their exaggerated accusations would sink into the minds of others. But what they didn't anticipate was that your very being, the calmness in your presence, the clarity in your words, the integrity in your actions, was enough to expose the falseness of their story. Every time they spoke, they unwittingly dug their own grave. Every added detail, every exaggerated claim made their story less believable and exposed their motives more clearly. Their desperation to create a narrative where you were the villain only highlighted the truth of who they really were, the person trying to manipulate perception to protect their fragile ego. How do we carry truth in a way that makes deception fall apart around us? What does it feel like to stand in our essence, so aligned with our purpose that no lie can take root? And how can we cultivate the kind of spiritual clarity that doesn't need to fight for itself, but simply exists as a shield? And so, as the liar's mask slipped and their true self was exposed, they began to avoid you not because of any confrontation you made, but because being around you was a constant reminder of what they tried to bury. Every interaction with you brought their own insecurities to the surface. Your presence was a mirror, and mirrors don't lie. Your very existence contradicted everything they tried to say about you. They couldn't stand in the light of your truth because it exposed everything they didn't want anyone to see. Their lie didn't just fail, it shone a spotlight on the very thing they tried to hide: their own bitterness, their jealousy, their insecurity, and their need to feel superior. They tried to tear you down, but in doing so, they only exposed the shadow within themselves, and that is something they can never take back. What happens when we stand so firmly in our truth that others' lies about us can't touch us? How do we feel when we realize that the energy we carry is the ultimate defense against any falsehood? And can we find peace in knowing that we don't need to fight back? Our alignment will always expose the truth. Number 12. This is the part they never saw coming. They thought they had chosen an easy audience, someone they could manipulate, someone who would swallow the story without a second thought, without question. They believed they had picked a listener who wouldn't see through the deception, a person who would simply accept their narrative and move on. What they didn't realize was that the person they chose wasn't neutral. This wasn't just someone standing in the background, someone who could be easily swayed by a well-spun tale. This was someone who had been watching quietly, observing your character, your integrity, your spirit over time. And most importantly, this was someone who was spiritually tied to you in a way the liar could never comprehend. How often do we walk through life unaware of the guardians we have around us? How can we recognize the spiritual ties that bind us to others, and how do those bonds protect us when we least expect it? And when others try to manipulate us, do we realize how powerful the unseen forces are that stand guard over us? The moment the liar opened their mouth, they didn't just expose themselves, They triggered a hidden guardian in your story. This person didn't make a spectacle of their protection. They didn't confront the liar publicly or create drama. They didn't need to. There was no need for a loud declaration, because in the quiet, something shifted. Internally, a protective instinct snapped into place. They saw you being unfairly targeted, and in that instant, something inside them said, "Not this one. You picked the wrong soul to play with." The liar didn't understand spiritual loyalty, nor did they recognize the depth of the bond between you and this listener. They didn't see that there are some souls who are assigned to protect you, not with a title or a banner, but